Assalamu alaikum and welcome to Sarak Chaap Podcast. In this episode, I'm going to talk about who we are as a collective. We're going to introduce ourselves and talk about how we started photography and why we chose street photography as a genre. What our goals are through photography. So, without further ado, let's dive right into it. So, I'm Hamza, your host for this episode. We're a collective of artists. Saad and me are based in Karachi, Pakistan. Murtaza is based in Canada, in Toronto. We photograph together, we talk about photography in Pakistan, and we do certain activities that promote the art of photography. Like this podcast, like our Instagram page at Sarak Chaap Collective. So we thought it would be appropriate to record an episode where we introduced ourselves and where we talked about our stories, how we started photography. To start off, I guess Saad can be the first one to introduce himself and then talk about why he started photography.
Hi guys, I'm Saad. I'm a photographer, currently based, as Hamza already mentioned, in Karachi since the past, I think, 3 years now. I came in 2019. Um, I picked up a camera during college. I was lucky enough to be in New York and was feeling a lot of things and have always been interested in a camera and photographing. I've always kind of wanted to learn. And it was very fortuitous, serendipitous, whatever you may want to call it. Fuck, I'm talking in English, but that's okay, I guess. I will try to use more Urdu as well. But Yeah, I sort of was lucky enough to find myself with a camera. I bought one for like $50. It happened to be a film camera. I didn't even know or remember what film was by then. I think film was discontinued in Pakistan in like 2005, 6 or something. Anyways, that I digress. And kind of just fell in love with the process of photography, really, of kind of walking around the streets and um, trying to find myself, whatever that means. I, of course, this was the era of Instagram. I was actually very anti-Instagram in my college years, but ever since I got into photography and got into looking at good photographs, it's kind of been a void, I guess. I don't know. It's nice to swim in it and hopefully not to drown, I guess. And so looking at work and trying to make those sort of those pictures that I was looking at, and it's been 5 years since then, and I'm still trying to kind of make those photographs and of course newer stuff that I've seen that I want to make now. That I know myself better, that I am a better photographer. So yeah, in short, that is, I guess, a brief introduction about
Sure.
me. I'm Saad.
So,
I'm a photographer.
so you talked about your how you got an interest in photography and how did um, you felt that you needed to discover yourself or find yourself in a way through photography. And then I would like to ask that what kind of themes do you find in your work, like what sort of subjects do you cover?
That's an
Yeah.
interesting question. Everything, I think. At first, when I was getting into the medium, I was almost very purist or only film. I don't understand digital. And you know how one has a tendency to sort of get. Um, but there's been, things have happened in this small journey of mine that have kind of expanded, helped me expand the things that I like to photograph. And I think in the current phase that I am in right now, like I have this sort of voracious thirst, I think, for photography and taking pictures and looking at pictures. That I will photograph anything. Um, I'm
सही
notorious for almost not caring about light at all. um, but I think theme wise, I don't know, street photography, right? I think somebody said that street photography was kind of like, I don't know, just a philosophy, or I think maybe it was Paul Graham or something, somebody who said something along the lines of photographing life as it, comes at me, or towards me, or as I live through it. And that's sort of the major theme, I think, my life really.
Thanks, Saad. So Murtaza, can you talk about what got you into photography?
Hello, everyone. Murtaza here. I'm based in Canada at the moment. I'm originally from Peshawar. Um, so what got me interested in photography was my brother. Actually, he taught me how to take photos, and he he was studying abroad at the moment. I was in Jamia. It's a uh, Islamic academy in Karachi. I was there, and we met in Yemen mutually on a trip, and he was studying in Canada at the moment, and he had a DSLR, and that got me into. We've always been, snapshot cameras. We
yeah
had those small, what do you call them, the cyber shots and whatnot. But uh, that was my first exposure to an actual DSLR, and he gave me a crash course there, and that got me into it. And then the academy got me started. It gave me some opportunities to yeah, thanks, Saad. I got the hint right now. Cyber shot. So the academy gave me some opportunities, event photography and this and that, but it got me into that photographer role in that shoes, and kind of pushed me to explore some stuff. And that at that time, Flickr or Instagram, Instagram abhi aaya nahi tha, Flickr ka zamana tha. I think it was 2012, 13, somewhere there. Um, तो वो बस आई मीन आई थिंक जो नेचुरल एक लाइफ लाइफ स्पैन होती है फोटोग्राफर की, उसमें फोटोग्राफर की क्या बात मेरी थी, जिसमें आई we were looking at, we were exposed to these trendy things, and then that led me to all these weird styles of photography, but it was all exploration. But मैं ये कह रहा हूँ क्योंकि at a very later stage, when I came to Canada, I went to film school. And while in film school, as Saad mentioned, like I got a film camera as well. It was a very cheap camera, a Minolta something. And just क्योंकि वो film expose हुई नहीं थी इतना, मतलब I think 5-10 साल हो गए थे, digital era had come up. So I was relearning film, and that got me into the history of photography, just reading about film, the origin of film. वहाँ से मुझे रियलाइजेशन इस बात की हुई कि डॉक्यूमेंट्री स्टाइल ऑफ फोटोग्राफी जो है वो एक जॉनरा है फोटोग्राफी में, फोटो जर्नलिज्म, डॉक्यूमेंट्री, स्ट्रीट फोटोग्राफी. तो उससे मुझे समझ आई कि भाई ये चीज़ है जो मुझे बहुत पसंद थी, लेकिन आई वाज नॉट एबल टू पुट अ फिंगर on that specific genre कि ये this is a style of photography. So yeah, that's kind of how I got into photography, and then into street photography through film and through these cameras. Like the camera as an object, I guess that is quite inspiring to me as well. And then photos, I see them as more like, um, of course, art in in its own glory, but also as historical artifacts. I think मैं अपने आप में जब reflect करता हूँ, तो उस चीज से अभी अभी फिलहाल at the moment I think I'm very pulled to uh, treating photos as historical artifacts कि भाई अभी इस moment में क्या चीज है जो आइंदा नहीं होगी. That concept really speaks to me. And then photography in general, I think lifelong learning is a value that I value, or it's like my personal value, और वो photography के साथ काफी हिलती जुलती है, क्योंकि you never stop learning. Like the eye can never stop developing, right? So that concept also really, that's why, you know, I keep on trying to be involved. Agar fizzle out ho bhi jata hai jazba kabhi kabhi, lekin this is what, you know, pulls me back in कि भाई नहीं अपनी आय जो है, even camera ना भी हो फिर भी you're still composing, वो जो पूरी बात है कि you know आप compose करते रहो. Or street photography in general, I think it, to me, it pushes me out of my comfort zone. I was like, you know, talking to strangers, getting close to people, and just general strangers, in you know, strangers ke saath interaction karna. I think maybe inherently I'm an introvert. I don't think that I am, but maybe I am from inside, which is why I have this reluctancy with strangers. But it pushes me in that direction, and that's always a challenge. So I guess that brings me back. अगर वो overcome हो जाए उसके बाद क्या होगा पता नहीं है, लेकिन at least I'm not at that stagnation point at the moment. Currently, what I'm doing, very honestly, nothing major in photography, but I do photograph on a daily basis. I document my kids, my family, and I view that from a documentary street photography lens, I guess. Just, you know, snapshots, I try to go beyond snapshots. I try to implement some compositional features, layering, this and that, whatever. So yeah, that's me in a nutshell.
That was a great intro, Murtaza. So I'll talk about myself. I am Hamza. I'm a 21-year-old photographer who's based in Karachi. Photography for me, like, you know, my relationship with photography has been a bit complicated in a sense that I don't really know how I started photography, because basically photography has always been a part of my life. Ever since I was a kid, you know, my dad had a film camera. I would always be fascinated by it. It was a Yashica, a very old Yashica. But, you know, I always had this interest towards photography. You know, I would watch movies, Bollywood movies or Hollywood movies, and they would be, you know, small scenes, like maybe, you know, the hero might be taking photos, or maybe, you know, you guys might have seen Three Idiots, and there was this photographer who wanted, there was this sort of engineering student who wanted to be,
Farhan.
but he wanted to be a wildlife photographer. So it's a, you know, it was a small thing, but it stuck with me, and, you know, so it always was a part of my life, and I wanted to try it. And so, you know, I took my dad's camera. I must have been 6 or 7. So back then we didn't have any film, but I would put my eye on the viewfinder, and I would just, you know, take photos, imaginary photos. It had a 50mm lens. So I was basically framing my shots since I was 6 years old. Flex. Chalo. So what's interesting, that I was taking photos, but I didn't really know, like, I didn't really care about the photographs that were coming out, because they never came out. I never got to see those photos. And later on, when I was born in the UAE, but I grew up in Karachi, and then I went back to the UAE. So when I went to UAE, I was exposed to all these, you know, like National Geographic magazine. I was exposed to these huge cameras that were coming out in 2012, 2013, which was a pretty interesting time for digital photography. So I was interested in, you know, these cameras, and but obviously I couldn't afford them. So I would just go to shops, and I go to these retail stores, and I would just take photos, and I would never keep those photos. You know, I would just do it for the pleasure of it. So when I came back to Karachi, I found, you know, Instagram was popular, and Visco was popular, VSCO. That app has, you know, some interesting film filters, analog filters. So I was interested in that, and
So you became
because
a Visco girl.
I became a Visco girl, white girl, if you want to say.
Very, very
So
nice.
yeah, but no Polaroids though. I was never a huge fan of Polaroids. So
Really unfortunate, I would say.
अनफॉर्चुनेट, हाँ, तुम अपना पोलराइड मुझे दोगे तो शायद मैं इंटरेस्टेड हो जाऊं
तो
उसके
मुझे
अंदर.
अपना कैमकॉर्डर दे दो, मैं दे दूंगा.
चलो सही, ट्रेड
फिल्में
डील.
ले लेना, 3,000 रुपए की हो गई.
ओह, महंगाई है. एनीवेज, सो I couldn't afford, like a huge camera or a DSLR or anything. But so I just started taking photos with my phone. I was like, why should I limit myself? I should just take photos. And I had, these editing apps, and I would experiment with those. After that, I discovered a book from Arif Mahmood, who is also a photographer based in Karachi. He's a street photographer, and he's been photographing for many years, like 30 or 40 years in Karachi. So when I saw his work, I was very interested in how did this guy do this kind of work living in Karachi, and it seemed like a very foreign style of photography. So I wanted to learn more about it. I didn't know anything about street photography, but I connected with those images that he made. um, so I got to meet him. I got to talk with more photographers, like Nadi Ali and Ali Adarsh and Saad and Murtaza. So all of these guys, it gave me sort of a hope that the photography in Pakistan can be much more. There's not a lot of photography that is emotional or that is expressive in nature. That's in the photo scene of Karachi. So I felt very comfortable with talking with these guys about photography. And then later on, I started photographing my own area. I started photographing old Karachi and places that I wanted to explore. It gave me
This
a
is a lie.
purpose.
This never happened.
It happened, but now it doesn't happen. It doesn't happen anymore. So all this exploring the city and all this, it gave me a it helped me make sense of Karachi, in a sense that when I came to Karachi was a very different city to me. It was a very hostile, maybe, or maybe a very cold city. And so it made me see Karachi through a human lens. It humanized the city for me, because everyone had their own story, everyone had their own mystery. So photography for me, it was like solving a mystery of what Karachi is and what uh, the world is, basically, because I was a very young guy back then. So taking those photos, taking pictures, the photos that I take, they have themes like mystery. They have isolation. Sometimes they have this feeling of fragility or insufficiency that I find in my photos. People who live in Karachi and they don't get a lot of maybe either they're suppressed, or they're constrained by society, or those kind of things. Or maybe contrasts or divisions or polarities that we find in Karachi. It's something that I find very interesting. I wanted to explore because I relate to it. So all right, so this is going to be a discussion, a conversation, rather than a monologue like each of us did. Uh, so we're going to talk about photography in Pakistan in general. What did we discover, and what did we find interesting about it? What should happen? What's not happening? Something along those lines. All three of us have photographed in Pakistan, and that's something that we have in common. Um, what was your experience? I would ask. So I think Saad can go first. Then we can start talking after that.
I'd rather somebody else go first, actually.
So
How
I'll
about
go.
MD?
I'll go first. So yeah, so I talked a little bit about it in my intro. That when I was going out in Karachi, um, you find a lot of people who are um, I guess they're dehumanized in a way when you see photos of Karachi that are popular. You Google it and then you find little boxes and little streets and bad infrastructure, and you see all these kind of photos. And then, but my experience of Karachi was very different. Looking at photos of Arif Mahmood, or just talking to people in general. Just experiencing Karachi from myself. It was for me a much more human experience. Everyone had so many different backgrounds and so many different diverse. There are so many diverse communities in Karachi, and I of course, the first feeling I got was I can never do justice. When I would take photos, I could never do justice to the landscape of photography. I couldn't photograph it on my own. So I guess I hope that there is a much more active scene, a photography scene in Karachi, where a lot of more and more people get interested in documentation, taking pictures of what's important to them, taking pictures of maybe what's fading away in Karachi. So, or maybe something that's overlooked by most people. So that kind of photography is very compelling to me, and unfortunately that photography is just not happening. um, it is happening, but on a very small scale, and all three of us know that. um, what do you guys think? Like, all three of us have photographed Karachi. Let's talk about Karachi now. So
Yeah, I think
what do you
it's
guys think?
an important point, because I think the city is being documented in a way, but जो photos ली जा रही हैं, I mean, everybody, obviously people, and we can disregard, the type of camera and all of that. That doesn't
Sure,
matter.
sure.
But even a person who has no clue about photography is at some level photographing their own lives and their
Yeah, yeah.
whatever is important to them. But what happens to those photos is a matter of
Mm.
concern, I think, at this point, because there's an like I doubt people even care about backing up their phones or photos or archiving them
Ah,
or anything like
ah,
that, right?
ah.
So that is a huge concern कि क्या होगा आगे जाके. I mean, the few people, I guess, वही होगा कि जो थोड़े लोग कर रहे हैं, जो systematically कर रहे हैं, उनका
Mm.
काम शायद बाकी रहेगा, और बाकी सारा जो है वो that will just get lost in the web at some point. और
Ah.
फिर पता नहीं 50-100 साल के बाद जब archives उसमें से निकलेंगे WikiLeaks के थ्रू, तो फिर सारी चीजें आएंगी.
Mm.
But I think creating that awareness of documenting your surroundings in a more systematic way, I think that's something that I try to do, at least in my surroundings. जो मेरे circle के लोग हैं उनको aware करना कि भाई ये काफी precious काम है जो आप कर रहे हो. जैसे मेरा अब्बू का phone है, for example, my own dad, he likes to take a lot of selfies. That's before the era of selfies. He is just like documenting himself in his own element or wherever he
Mm.
went. That was his kind of self, like journaling sort of a thing. But now
Mm.
I'm documenting his stuff in a systematic way because I know we're not here forever, and that's something that his
Mm.
generations to come in his lineage will maybe cherish after he passes or after I pass. कि भाई ये हमारे दादा थे या परदादा थे जो जिन्होंने ये कुछ किया हुआ है या जो भी whatever. There's just a family record.
Mm.
But even छोटे से scale पे भी हम कर सकते हैं.
Mm.
That is a matter of concern, I think. लोग actively करते नहीं हैं उसको value.
Yeah, no, totally. Yeah. But at the same time, I think everybody has a phone, right? As we sort of alluded to as well. So it is happening, I guess. For us photographers, it just feels like, oh, it's not happening in the way that we want it to happen, right? Like, oh, it's not a traditionally beautiful, like black and white
Mm.
image with like harsh light and deep shadows or whatever. And attention is not being paid as much to the phone. So yeah, no, a great point. Because I think, I mean, that is kind of like the work that we are trying to do with Sarak Chaap as well. In that, we kind of identify that there is this sort of gap, I think, in Pakistani sort of photography that, like, these images have been made and are being made, but there isn't really any or like many platforms for that can sort of sift through these images and kind of then show them to us. Um,
Yeah.
I was reading something or listening to a talk, and they said that as photographers, our job is to kind of refresh public memory, kind of, and like there's this weird public amnesia, I guess, right? But we all forget, I think, way too quickly. So I don't know. That I feel like is something where we kind of are trying to come in and figure out. Um, I don't know the solution
But at the same
or how
time,
to address it. Really, I don't know if there.
if you just think about it,
That sounds a bit better.
I joined university about a year ago, and I got to meet a lot of people who were of my own age, and and all of them have phones, and all of them have cameras of their own, and they take photos. Um, but at the same time, it's that not a lot of people know about things that are important to the city. For example, heritage sites. We talk about Fair Hall, which is a very popular place to go and commune and to talk about things or to experience art. And it's a very interesting place, but none of them know about it. Even though it's very popular. Or maybe something like a place like Empress Market, or
Yeah.
the places that are
Sorry to cut you off, but I think at the end of the day there is that intentionality and maybe not intentionality more, but just that sort of consciousness of, okay, like I am documenting or I am photographing, or this is how I would like for these images to be shown. Because I think when you're just taking those images personally, you're not really thinking about all of those other other things that come after the fact of taking a photo.
I think that
So in
consciousness
that
is
way,
very
I
important.
think,
It's very important.
that's what most people, I guess, one can
Because I
say.
started photographing, consciously, like you said. I would look at pictures of like old Karachi, and I don't know what that person had in mind, but if I started photographing ordinary things like that person was taking, maybe I'll 5 years or 10 years in the future, maybe I'll find a value in these pictures. And I do find value in these pictures, because a lot of things that I photographed about 2 years ago, 3 years ago, they're not there anymore. Like, it's appalling to me how fast the city is moving, how quickly things are disappearing and being
Just
built over them. So it was very interesting, and it gives me more reason to start photographing intentionally and to have that consciousness. uh, yeah, it's
just
very important.
just
It's
a
very
hint. Start photographing gas stations.
important. Yeah. Bro, gas stations are going to be there, they're not going to go
Gas
anywhere.
gas
Seedhi baat hai.
stations are going to be a thing of the past in the next.
Maybe not
Yeah,
gas
maybe,
stations, but like the meter of the gas station.
Yeah.
I think
exactly.
that's very relevant. Aajkal 250 pe, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
wanted
Bilkul
to
hai.
I wanted to take pictures of my gas station meter. I
Historical
was
time that we are
Yeah.
living through.
Bilkul,
yeah.
COVID के अंदर the gas dropped like 0.5 cents or something like that, and that was crazy. Like, that's not going to happen in the next, I don't know, 200 years probably. So
But yeah, I guess that's just a brief about Pakistani photography, or like the scene in Karachi. Sorry, go on.
yeah, I just wanted to add another point about the whole vision of the collective was to also kind of find ourselves and maybe potentially set the stage for what the what the
Facilitate,
voice
I
of
think, right?
yeah, or facilitate even, yes,
Yeah.
what the voice of Pakistan, or what is Pakistani photography. There's we see India has a very strong sense of photography. They have these colors and vivid colors, and there are all these international photographers come, and they said there's a certain, you can feel that this is India, right? What is Pakistan? That was something that we wanted to explore and kind of facilitate, as Saad said, and explore that even for ourselves. Like, Patani, I don't know, I can't really put a finger. Maybe you guys can up till now, but I don't know if there is a distinct.
I think that's what makes being a Pakistani fun, right?
Yeah.
Because we still haven't. It's about to be 75 years in a month's time, 5-6 weeks, and we have no idea. But I don't know. One can say that about America as well.
Yeah.
Maybe more so now than before. And America's been around, at least as a nation state, since 1776. So, but yeah, no. What is Pakistani photography? Identifying like trends. I think in Pakistani photography. I think when we were starting out, I at least I can only speak for myself. I don't know. Maybe that was too ideal of me to think or to hope to find like one Pakistani photography. I don't know if that's really true anymore. But to kind of just um, find out all the notes and sort of connect with them. I guess after having said this, it seems like I'm just regurgitating what Sarak said. And I think they had like an exhibition, something to do with trees and branches and whatnot. So yeah, kind of, just learn together, play together, figure this out sort of together. And I don't know, photography it can be a sort of lone ranger kind of sport. But what I realized in the past, I don't know, almost 2 years, I think, if not more, of doing this is that I kind of like, to have it be a bit communal as well, and to kind of talk about it. I don't know, because photography for me is, it doesn't end at the picture, right? Like it sort of begins at the photograph. So yeah, sorry, just
I also
my
think
two
about
cents, I guess.
when I talk to people about, in my own age group, right? They have a very specific idea of what photography is. They're very sure about oh, it's going to look like this Instagram post, or it's going to have this blurred background, or this uh, aesthetic element. It's going to have these kind of colors, teal and orange. It's going to have this kind of light. And so, how do you challenge that? Like narrow perspective of photography. How do you translate your photography and then start and show that photography is so much more than that? You can photography has so many functions, and it can do this, it can do that, it can make you feel this way. So I think
So
that's the big challenge.
to inspire, right?
To inspire
To
and
kind
to exhibit as more as you can, and to make them be aware of
of
that
what
this is
exists
happening.
out there, because I think
Yeah.
we are also very stuck in the sort of 1980s kind of Steve McCurry, Afghan girl
Yeah.
aesthetic of just
Yeah.
photographing poor children or just poverty with sparkling eyes and trauma,
Mm.
oozing out of a photograph. Um, yeah,
What I do was, like, when they ask me, like, ये तो मैं भी खींच सकता हूँ तस्वीर ना, ये तो कोई भी खींच सकता है, it's very easy to take pictures. I was like, तो तुम क्यों नहीं खींच रहे? That's the main question. That's why aren't you taking these kind of pictures? And then when I show them the work of the greats and the people who have done all this work, and I've seen people be genuinely interested in this kind of photography.
there's something about great work that is just so inspiring, right?
Yes,
Like it just begs you to kind of
because in
go
the
and
end it's all
create.
human, right? It's all about the human experience. uh yeah,
Sorry.
I'm saying that it's all about in the end it's all about the human experience that you have with
Sure.
photography. You relate to it in some way or another, and you make sense of it. There's some truth to it, that's why you relate to it.
Uh,
So yeah.
I think we should also consider time.
yeah.
Sorry to cut you off.
Sure,
What
No,
do
no,
you
I
say?
was just going to just begin the wrap up. के let's just mention what the goal of the podcast is. Like हम क्या करेंगे, किसको बुलाएंगे, किन लोगों के साथ बात करेंगे,
yes,
इस type
Allah
की
जाने
conversation.
bro.
हाँ बस सही है,
Allah जाने.
ठीक
कुछ
है.
नहीं पता. तुम लोगों का
yeah,
कुछ नहीं पता. मेरा कुछ नहीं पता.
किसी का
किसी
कुछ
का
नहीं
नहीं
पता.
पता. किसी का कुछ नहीं।
Oh,
The only thing that
Again.
is constant
Oh.
is
Yeah.
the
What
only
is
thing
the
that
only?
is constant is change.
Yeah.
Wow.
But now we
Murtaza in
have
his
some
white girl face right now.
we have some
Change
good
to
people
आएगा.
in our minds. We have a lot of interesting photographers, people who have been taking photos in Karachi, in Pakistan for a while, who have been inspiring us, and they continue to inspire us, and who
Shout
have
out to
very
all the
shout out to Arif Mahmood, shout out to shout out to Usaid, Lost in K Town. Yeah, a lot of interesting people are going to come, and I'm going to ask you guys to stay tuned for these episodes that are coming. Um, Hopefully you'll enjoy them. We're certainly going to enjoy them because these are all people that we admire. These are all people that have inspired us. So yeah, we'll see you next time. And this is it for now. Allah Hafiz.
Bye.
Allah Hafiz.
Khuda Hafiz bhai. Bahut ho
Khuda
gaya.
Hafiz.